Hey guys, welcome to Approach the Nerd. It's your girl Maria Park, and I got my boy with me from Japan across the pond. It is Joe from Joe's Geek Show. Please go to his channel and like and subscribe. And in this video, we are here to review all of season three of the Orville New Horizons. And when I say all, basically the highlights of what we like, because we really don't have time to review the entire season, but just stuff that we liked. And as a kind of companion video, I did have a chance to do another interview with two actors from the Orville, and that is Penny and Mark, who play Claire and Isaac. So I'll be posting that video after I post this one. So yeah, so without further ado, Joe, we're going to talk about some highlights of season three, New Horizons, which we did state before when me and you were talking is much bigger, more cinematic, and the writing is very, very good this season. Like it's completely like evolved in terms of writing. So just tell me some highlights for you. What did you think about season three?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't even really know where to start, really, because season three was just it was just another evolution of the show. I mean, we know that the show started off as a bit of a Star Trek parody at first, and then the second season it kind of like evened out the tone a little bit while still having some comical elements and whatnot. Whereas this season, like because we are finally moved away from Fox, the show is now on both Hulu and Disney Plus. It's like a completely new ball game. Like it's still the show that we enjoy, but they definitely decided, okay, it's Star Trek. This show is nonetheless Star Trek at this point. You know, they've relegated the comedy to just a few key characters, and they do have some funny moments throughout the series, particularly the finale. But we'll get to that one in a bit. But I mean, there's just so many good elements this season. Like just the first episode alone, and spoiler warning for those that haven't seen the show yet. Which, if you haven't, why go watch it? Disney Plus, Hulu, go check the streaming services.
And why are
Have
you in this
fun.
video? Don't watch this video.
Exactly, it's a great time, great time. But yeah, I mean, just starting off with the first episode was very interesting because you have the character Isaac, who's now it's the aftermath of that big Kalon battle in the season finale of the Orville season two, and of course. A lot of people have died. I mean, lots of people, and and most everybody on board, like they're very hostile towards Isaac. Especially the new character Charlie Ensign Burke, and it's just sort of like, okay, Isaac kind of starts to think about it logically, like, okay, if my presence aboard the ship is going to effectively hinder the performance of the crew, then I should remove myself from the equation. And it was very interesting because effectively this is an episode about suicide. And it's definitely when they actually start talking about that dynamics of like Isaac's thought process and things like that. And of course, remorse from those that told them just to get it over with, and and to go ahead and do that. It's really sad, even though this is a robot character that they were luckily able to revive. That was one of my biggest fears going into season three is, did they just get rid of Isaac? Is he just gone from the show? But it really does set the tone for the new precedent that the show wants moving forward in terms of how it's going to handle its storytelling. And and it really just only amps up and continues from there, because I mean, moving forward, we have other really heavy hitting type of episodes, two particularly surrounding Topa, which is the child of Bortus and Clyden. And if we had, watching one of the previous seasons, that some things happened with Topa within Moclan society, in that she was born a female, but they turned her into a guy. So then the real first episode was really about gender identity, and Topa struggling with I look one way but I feel another, and then finding out the truth about her origins and whatnot, and just what that means to her, what that means to Bortus, and also like what that means for even Clyden, who's like at this point in time still full within his Moclan teachings and stuff like that. And it's really interesting just to watch everybody's just thoughts and opinions and all the emotions come out of this one particular episode, and even ends in a way which several episodes did, which just choked me up so much, where I was just like, hey, why you gotta hit me in the feels all the time? um and so and I will say, where Clyden exits in this particular episode and then comes back in the next Topa based episode, where he effectively apologizes and says, I thought I hated you, but then the thought of losing you, I can't bear it. It's like, I love you just for exactly who you are. And I'm just like, God damn. It was really emotional stuff. And again, just the entire season in general was like that. And, I would say probably one of my favorite episodes had to be the Gordon episode, which was the big time travel episode. Because even that, there was a lot of questions being thrown out into the ether, because there was, the Union has these rules about what happens if they ever achieve time travel. And it's like, hey, if you find yourself back in the past where, you could, I guess, rewrite history because you have all of this knowledge and stuff like that, you have to follow these rules and stuff like that. But then when Gordon gets back into the past and then they try to go back after him and they find out they missed the mark by about a good 10 years, they discover Gordon, who had said, okay, I followed the rules and I followed the books to the letter for about 3 years before it's like, I'm living in hell. I'm pretty sure you guys aren't ever coming after me. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go make a life for myself, which he does. And I feel for him. The episode really does make you feel for Gordon, because he brings up a lot of good points, even as Captain Mercer, Captain Mercer tries
Kelly.
to and Kelly, they're coming down on him saying, how can you do this? They're trying to be all stern and stuff like that. Which of course, every time Captain Mercer gets, really uppity with somebody, I keep thinking oh yeah, who released a Krill prisoner?
Who had a child with the Krill prisoner?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that was another big reveal from season 3. But it's what do you really think you have a leg to stand on here? Because Gordon brings up some really good points in this episode. We have the rules, but nobody's ever experienced it. And it's even if you get down into the nitty gritty, I'm already, even within those first 3 years, I've already broken so many laws by our society standards. By our society standards, I'm now a murderer because I've had to kill animals to survive. Yeah. And it's just one of those things where it's just the end of the episode's coming and you're just God damn, let the guy have his family. And the episode does something, very ingenious by not telling us what the fate of that particular timeline is, because we don't know if that timeline gets erased or if it just creates a branch timeline where Gordon still gets to live out his existence with his family. We don't know, and we will probably never know. I don't know. But also concerning time travel, I will say, gave us easily the most satisfying wrap up to a time travel story I had ever seen in my life. And that was Gordon sending a sandwich 3 months into the future and then getting a sandwich 3 months into the future in the finale.
I love Lamar's reaction to that. He's all this crazy crap on this damn ship is the way he said it. And you have Captain Mercer just sipping his coffee. I agree with you that this is definitely Star Trek. Honestly, at some points, it's almost like Star Trek done a little better.
I wouldn't even say almost. It's Star Trek. I've watched bits of Discovery. It's doing Star Trek better than Star Trek currently.
There are elements of Star Trek 6. There are, there's so many elements of different Star Trek series and movies in it. It is a love letter to Star Trek, but I will say they never really got rid of the nonsensical language. They've just gotten better at embedding it where it doesn't affect the plot, which I think is very creative. Because there's no point in time you'll ever hear on Star Trek when they're walking around and they're like, "Sir, there's an alien on the port," and then they're just like, "Fuck." Nobody just says "fuck" on Star Trek. It's just so natural, and they'll be talking about something so serious, like, what are we going to do about the Krill potentially being allied with the Moclan? oh, but by the way, did anybody go to my room and check the temperature gauge? I think I'm sweating. And maybe my sauna is broken. It's like, how do you split off into this conversation from, potentially world domination or something like that? It's just very interesting how it's so natural. It's what I really love about this show,
Right.
is they just can segue into it, and they can get into a point where it's very humorous, like that. Like, case in point, season finale, Gordon. I remember they were all in engineering,
Oh my God.
and Gordon is
The
in
season
his feelings
finale.
because Bortus has decided he will be the best man at Isaac and
He
Claire's
just
wedding.
snatched it right from Gordon,
Yeah.
like right in the middle of Isaac asking Gordon to
Yep.
be the best man.
But I love how Ed's like, so answer this question. Are you more upset about the Kalon trying to dominate and take over Earth, or more upset about not being best man? And he's like, I'm more upset about this. Like, this is like, all like, thousands of people died in the Kalon attack, but he's more upset because he was going to be best man, and Bortus had to be in the limelight. And it's so funny how they focus on that, and like the Elvis performance, hilarious.
The Elvis performance on that side, but don't forget the females. Was it the women's bachelorette party with the Kalon stripper?
Yeah. That's completely out.
That episode cracked me up, and like what I really loved about the finale was it was just such a good stress reliever, I guess, from like the entire, like pretty much the whole season was just like serious, little bits of comedy sprinkled out, but overall a very serious season. And having this as a good decompression, just to be able to have those laughs and stuff like that, getting all these good moments.
Alara came back to do a cameo.
Isaac and Claire's wedding and stuff like that, and
yeah,
and I really like, especially the interaction between like Claire and Lamar. You know what I'm talking about?
That was awesome. Well, and it goes to show Lamar always comes off as kind of like the calmer one in the friendship duo between him and Gordon. But in retrospect, he's also the most jaded when it comes to relationships. Because remember, in the earlier seasons, Gordon always said, I had an allergy to relationships. Well, Lamar doesn't have an allergy. He just doesn't seem to ever want to be in them. But he has been, him and Talia have been messing around with each other, which has also been hysterical, which we can talk about in a second.
They did attempt a serious relationship, yes.
And they should at this point, which is kind of confusing for me. And I said this in my review of the season finale. I thought they were still together. I don't know why they weren't paired together in the season finale, because I thought that would have been a thing, because they've decided to give their relationship an actual chance. Because they generally like each other.
Well, in the episode where they were trying to have a relationship, where they were trying to get it like physical and stuff, I believe in the very one of the very last lines of them was like Lamar saying, "Yeah, maybe this wasn't such a good idea." Where it pans over to his face and it was just like really messed up and stuff like that.
I feel like it was just like an oversight maybe of them not, because what would they really done besides just like being in each other's orbit, I guess, because there's just so much going on. But no, like Lamar giving Isaac advice, basically telling him to play the field. He's like, you don't want to just go with the first person and that you have a relationship with and then marry them. And so Isaac's like, okay. So he goes to Kelly. He's like, hey, can we have a date in coitus? And she's like, what?
Yeah. After Claire had agreed to Isaac's proposal in the first place, at which Isaac was like, okay, I will make the necessary preparations.
Yeah, but yeah, Claire found out about Lamar, and that scene was hysterical. I love how she walked in the engineering and was like, Lamar! And he's like, you can see the wheel saying, oh shit, in his head. And she marched up those stairs and she just tore into him. And it was absolutely hilarious. It was hilarious. But I mean, she had every right to, because Lamar needs to stay out of people's business. He just does. But no, like
I mean, in fairness, Isaac did ask, but
technically
Lamar should remember that Isaac is still very impressionable and is just kind of like he'll do what most anybody would suggest.
But I think somebody else had asked him first about why he wanted to get married. So Lamar just kind of
Yeah.
interjected because he kept making those noises or whatever. And he's like,
Mhm.
oh, let me just give you my 5 cents. And they were like, everybody else in there, like, no, no, just be quiet, you know? And he just starts talking and he's like, oh gosh. So yeah, Lamar just got himself in trouble. Um, Speaking of Ed, though, you're right. Ed has this problem. I don't know what it is. As much as I love the Orville, he gets so like single focused on somebody else screwing up, but he's not single focused when he does things that are shady.
Mhm.
Case in point, her name went out of my head. She is the first female Mocklin who did basically was doing the resistance, and they were on their own. They had their own colony on another planet, and they had agreed that they wouldn't smuggle baby female infants, into the colony. And in return, the Mocklin, society left them alone, basically.
Right.
So yeah, she was still in her feelings, and so she basically tried to enlist Topa as kind of like a spy. She wanted her to relay messages to their spy. It was helping them smuggle the babies out. But my problem with Ed is this. In that episode, it's one thing that you want her to basically come clean and potentially be imprisoned, herself. But she basically was in her feelings because she's like, you don't understand. All of the women on my colony will be paying for this too, and half of them probably didn't even know what was going on. So like you're basically
Yeah.
sentencing these people to pretty much be imprisoned or even death, however the Malcolms decided to handle that. And he was like in his feelings. So he was like, well, let me get Dolly Parton, to come and convince you of the error of your ways. And
Which
I'm
it was
just like,
awesome that she decided to she agreed to cameo in
yeah,
the
no, that was
episode. That
awesome,
was
especially
great.
since I read that they actually had to go to Nashville, I believe, to actually set up to record from her home. So that's pretty
Mhm.
cool. But no, like I just feel like Ed, like for doing the greater good, what he just completely failed to realize is he potentially was sentencing all these innocent women to potentially be killed or imprisoned. So yeah, I was kind of on the fence about that. I'm like, I understand you were angry about her getting Topa
Yeah.
involved, but you also have to understand
Like
that
a it's
unions
like a
rule.
reverse Mr. Spock.
Yeah.
The needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think you need to reassess some stuff, sir. So yeah, he gets so in his feelings. Even the episode with Gordon time traveling, and it was the same girl that actually came to the Orville in the future. Remember, they had her cell phone, and
Mhm.
she was able to see the future, and Gordon instantly fell in love with her then too. So it was the same girl. He actually sought her out in her own
Yep.
timeline, basically. But yeah,
Using
Ed
that
was
future
like, how
knowledge of her to woo her.
yeah. And Ed was like, how could you do this? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm just thinking, again, you literally let a krill go and impregnated her. I'm like, you are a hypocrite, So yeah, I was in my feelings. But the whole situation with
Yep.
Topa that you mentioned, I'm really happy that they readdressed that because I know that was very controversial when they aired that episode, especially among the transgendered, um, basically the transgender journey in the
Right.
LGBTQ scope, because you're basically forcing someone to be a gender that they are not. And it's kind of like a
Mhm.
reversal of what's actually happening in transgenders with transgenders, because my spouse is transgender. So I know that dysphoria and the struggle is real. So I'm really happy that they went back, and then we saw not only Topa get to become the female she was meant to be and was born and be in the correct
Mhm.
body, but Clyden coming to terms with it speaks volumes, because remember, Clyden was a girl who was born a female and was forced to be a male by his own
Oh
parents.
yeah.
So yeah, that to me is interesting. But I will say Clyden has become, so he was so annoying. But then when he kind of got over his stuff and he got a little bit nicer, except for he still talks like the way Bortus and Clyden talk to each other. You really feel like they're about to rip each other's throats out, and is absolutely hysterical. Like, there's a scene where they're at Kelly's cabin, and they have these, I think it was walnuts or some kind of nut. They were trying to crack the nuts. And
Yep.
like, like Clyde was like, everyone is now laughing at us. And he's like, I will get the flesh of this nut. And it's like, it's such a like passionate thing, but it's like almost like they're about to strangle each other. But then they like in the season finale, I think it was like literally the epitome of what in the hell is happening in their marriage, because they're talking about the marriage mating ritual or
I was just about to bring
rebonding.
that up. How they have to reaffirm their
Yeah, they
marriage to keep
reaffirm
it
their
going.
marriage. And it's, I mean, it sounds just like sexual assault. Like literally, we're both going to strip
It
naked,
sounds like it. I
and I'm,
mean, running
and
through the
then
woods
yeah,
naked, you got to pin the person down against their will as they try to struggle and get away.
yep. And then they will have the coitus, and then they will be reaffirmed. But it's like I have to chase him down and make him pretty much my bitch. And it's like, but they say it with such a straight face. It's like, and everyone's looking. I love how Ed and Kelly both looked at each other like, that sounds like assault. Like, sure, we want to watch this. But it did lead to one of the most awkward scenes in the entire episode, and that's when they come back and they're both they've reaffirmed their bond, and they
Marriage,
put their
yeah.
foreheads together, and it was like, yeah,
It starts clapping.
and then they just like are still doing it like for like 5
Oh yeah,
minutes.
no. I mean, the joke literally runs for about probably a good 2-3 minutes of just them clapping
Close
and
to
like they're
5.
trying to
And then Gordon's
like.
like,
I mean, they're trying to go as loud as possible. Like, okay, guys, we're done. We're done.
hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But yeah, so there's so many parts of this season that are like that. They're just, and then there's so many things. If you really break it down, you could actually compare to Star Trek. Like Isaac and the running of Isaac and Claire, to me, honestly, is definitely Diana Troy marrying Riker, just because of the circumstances. And remember because the betas always would be naked, and they had this whole traditional thing that they would do, and there was music involved. So all that stuff reminded me of their marriage, which I believe was in movie 6. I have to go back and check. And then of course, if you just kind of look, and they've done this since the first season, but if you kind of look through the timeline, like look at Isaac getting an emotion chip, which is such a Data thing, when Data got his emotion chip, Isaac got an emotion chip in the same scope. The only thing is it failed for him.
Yeah, he was newer Kalon models.
Yeah.
Kind of sad because he was all happy and stuff. Claire was happy, and then boom, just it's gone.
It did
was
open up
all
a
of
question for me,
3.5
though.
seconds.
So this is a question, and I did kind of ask this in an interview, but I didn't ask fully. But why are all the Kalon presenting as male? It's interesting, right? We know Mockless Society is definitely all male. Well, we know there are females, but they only say that they're all male.
Primary Mocklin Society is,
yeah.
If everything keeps going the way it's going, one could overtake the other.
Exactly. And now that they're actually working with the Krill, and they're like in bed with the Krill, and their leader is of course female. And
that's going to be a very rocky union though for season 4. I bet they're just going to be at each other's heads all the time.
It's going to be like this whole, I'm telling you, season 4 is going to be insane. But I just wonder.
Game changer.
Yep. I just really wonder, because I was thinking about the Kalon, and I'm like, why do we not have female voiceovers for these Kalon? Because technically they shouldn't have a gender. You could really make yourself look like anything. So yeah, I was really, really curious. When I was interviewing Mark about Isaac, I had asked that question. And I think I stomped him, but like we were discussing Isaac, because Isaac's character, being that he's an alien that presents more as an AI or a robot,
right?
He acts so human. Case in point,
it definitely has its moments.
Yeah. Think about the scene on the bridge. So basically, Isaac in the season finale decides that because Claire's inviting people, he should be able to have guests come to the wedding as well. So he invites every Kalon, and 4,000 of them show up. Which was not something you would think that he would have thought that through, because that means all of these ships have to appear and it's going to look like they're attacking. But when all is said and done, Ed calls Claire to the bridge, and Claire gives him this look like, what in the hell is wrong with you? And you just see him slowly turn around like, oh no. And that is such a human response. That's not a machine. That is a human reaction. There have been many times in the season where he will do something that is so human. And when I was talking to Mark about it, he has his theories. I want to spoil anything, but one thing I did say that I thought was very interesting, and I don't know if you agree with this, Joe, but you ever notice that when Isaac is presenting as his Kalon self, he does act like he has reactions and he emotes more like a human. But when he's in his human form, that is when he actually looks more like and acts more like a robot, which is really weird. It's like his face doesn't move. He doesn't blink. He's just not, there's no emoting at all. And I asked Mark if that was a choice. I won't tell you what he said. You have to watch the video, but it's something that I noticed. I don't know if you picked up on that at all. But I always thought it was really interesting. The more human Isaac presents, the less human he seems. And then and basically in reversal, the more Kalon he looks, the more human he seems. I mean, and it's not just him. Because, something happens in this season that is a huge game changer. And that is the sacrifice of Ensign Charlie Burke when she basically sacrifices herself to save the Kalon, right? But remember how Prime...
She didn't last long enough.
Remember how Prime actually, the Prime Kalon actually reacted to her because he saw that, and
he was shocked.
Yeah, and for a machine to be able to be shocked, that is a human response.
Yeah, so because in his brain, he's like crunching the numbers. He's like, wait, we did all this stuff to them, so what's it? It doesn't, like, on a logical scale, it doesn't make any sense to them. The Kalons are stumped from that because they just don't understand humans. They don't understand the thought process that, like, oh, hey, not every human or not every biological being is exactly the same as your creators.
Yeah, and not all of them are trying to enslave you, but which is something they're very sensitive about, because I remember when when Isaac calls to invite them to the wedding and they're like, you're getting married? Is this a form of enslavement? I'm like, no, I'm choosing to do this.
I was like, well, it depends on who you ask, right?
Why would you want to do that? So I'm glad Isaac's not using the term ball and chain, because that probably would not have gone over very well. But no, I just think it's interesting that the Kalon is, especially Isaac, the way they react is sometimes more human than most of the humans on the ship. So it's just very interesting. We got introduced to a lot of aliens this season, a lot of new aliens. One of the creepier ones was the arachnid type aliens that we were introduced to. They get there's like a distress call, and I think it was the Krill who said don't go there because it's basically the devil. And of course the Orville went anyway. And there was an admiral who happened to be the ex-husband of Claire, and he gets infected, and he starts evolving and morphing into this really grotesque alien creature that like can climb on walls and ceilings. It's just very horrible. And basically they infect other people, and essentially they are a completely different race. Now, remember, me and Joe, we tried to look up the name, and I don't think we ever found the name of these creatures.
We never did. And like, I actually went back and watched the episode. They never name dropped them.
Well, that's interesting. So yeah, I really want to see, like, basically try and get the lay of the land, and if they ever decide to name them. Yeah, that's very.
I definitely think that's. I think the intention of that particular episode was to establish how this race comes about, and also to set up a new player in the next season.
Yeah, which I'm completely okay with. But I mean, we got to see another form of alien that basically worshiped Kelly, and they were like they're pretty much this world's version of the Q. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, eventually they became that.
Yeah. So like I said, we got introduced to a lot of very cool aliens. We've had a lot of good plots that happened. We got to see a very interesting character in Charlie, and see her go from being angry and not accepting Isaac to actually accepting Isaac as different from the other Kalon, and then eventually sacrificing herself to save the Kalon, to show that she as a human being does not have to be like them and like everyone else. And, and her motivations being that she had a best friend that she was in love with and didn't get a chance to say anything. And she ended up sacrificing herself to save Charlie. So it's like a round circle. And her last words saying, I'm coming, I'm going to be with you soon, or see you soon, Amanda, or something like that. I mean, it was so sad, and it was so game
Yeah,
changing and emotional, and it
I,
was very well
I
written.
definitely did not want to see the character go so
No, me
soon because
either.
I really liked her as a character, especially because she brought something different in terms of skill set too. Because she's the only character in the show thus far that can think, as they put, fourth dimensionally, which was a
Yeah.
very interesting skill for somebody to have because she was she was able to do certain things that nobody else could do in terms of like thought process and stuff. Like she was the only one that could reactivate Isaac when in the Gordon episode, while Ed and Kelly had to go try to get Gordon, Isaac and Charlie had to drill into the earth in order to get the material, like the mineral or whatever
Yeah, the
needed to
mineral
power
crystals
the
they use to
device.
power the machine
And
at the
like
time. Yeah.
and they had to like change direction every so often to make sure that no tectonic plate caused any kind of disruption at all in Earth's history over the course of thousands of years or so.
Yeah, which was insane, and actually a very cool episode, especially the bar scene. It was really, really funny.
Oh my god,
Um,
that was great. Just watching Isaac just arm wrestle, and she's just like, "Okay, here you go, here you
there
go.
you go.
Okay, you can start winning now."
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie and Isaac together were like vinegar and water, but it worked. It is just, I really, really enjoyed like the evolution of their friendship, which was so sad because right when they got to
Yeah,
the
in a
peak of their
way, they
respect for each
were
other, she
in a
died.
way they were Pinky in the Brain to a
Yeah,
degree,
pretty much.
in
Yeah.
terms of like polar opposites, but still they just work together so well.
Right. And of course, we cannot end talking about the season without talking about some things that went on with Kelly. Two things come to mind for me. The first thing is the almost kiss between her and Bortus this season. She
Yeah.
bonded a lot with Bortus over Topa, because if you remember in previous seasons, she was a big champion of not having Topa be forced to have a sex change. And so it kind of came full circle when she became the mentor of Topa, and then eventually kind of like the champion for her after she transitioned back to her original gender. But the episode where Topa gets kidnapped, taken by the Mocklin, because they pretty much figured out she was working or going to be working as a spy. They really didn't know where she was in that process, but they were trying to identify the spy in their camp, and they basically tortured this little girl when Kelly and Boris were on the way to rescue her.
They bring on the torture.
They did, but they almost had a kiss, which is interesting. And that's so, I'm going back to Star Trek TNG. That is so Diana Troy and Worf right there. So that's another moment that I pulled from that season, because that's again who I kind of related them to. And then of course the scene where she has to call him down, calm Boris down when he gets his daughter, and he's literally killing, and I mean killing, the Mocklin that tortured her. I've never seen Boris, which I get
it. Right too, though.
I mean, I'm a parent, you're a parent, we get it, but like just that whole scene was it was very, very raw. And then we see Lysella. Lysella was in the season finale. And if you remember her, she's from a planet where basically if you're voted down in popularity, you could be executed. It's almost like your entire planet is a reality show based on a point system of how cool you are, what your reputation is. And, it's like, it's basically a planet of influencers, basically. And she kind of wanted out. And we got to see Kelly kind of deal with trying to show her. She was showing her all this cool stuff that we as viewers never got to see because they didn't have the budget for it, and now they do. And so it was like, where was all this? We saw, for seasons 1 through 3, but we got to see all these different planets. A planet that was in the background. It was cool. It was very, very cool. And it got me wondering if Lysella, since Kelly kind of adopted her as her adoptee sister on the board, if she's going to be the new player. Since we lost Charlie, Alara did a cameo, and we learned that she's doing really well at designing, like, I think it was like safe houses. No, it wasn't safe houses. She was doing something. Design. She was basically doing architecture. and helping design things. I don't know if there were bases or what, I can't remember, but she was doing really, really well, and she was able to come to the wedding last minute. But we know Alara's not coming back. So Alara's gone, Charlie's gone. So I'm wondering if Lucella is the next one. You got a girl who thinks fourth dimensionally, and now you've got a girl who's from a planet that's kind of on par with ours in terms of technology.
I was gonna say, basically us.
Yeah, it's literally the yin and yang. So I wonder how that, I mean, her journey is going to be interesting. Her having to learn all this stuff about the, future tech and how to thrive when she never even realized, or her planet never knew there was life beyond their borders, basically. So it's interesting. And I loved how Kelly got to explain why they don't share their tech, with planets that are not as advanced as them. And I love the explanation. And even though when Lucella kind of still was in her feelings and was like, you guys are hoarding the stuff that can make my world better. People won't starve anymore. And then Kelly takes her to a planet where basically when the Union first started going out, like missionaries, they shared tech, and it basically wiped out billions of people on that planet because they weren't ready. So it got me in my feelings.
It was something like a society that stood for like hundreds of years or so wiped out in like 5 years.
In 5 years from advanced tech. And she made some valid points too. She was like, if we were to share this tech, it wouldn't be free for all. I mean, people would fight over it. It would basically go to the rich and the political, and and it's absolutely true. If you look at how our society is today, it's 100%. We could never handle tech like that because it would be exploited, and the weak would get weaker, and poor would get poor, and the richer would get richer. And it's just what it is. It would not be free, and we probably end up destroying each other. So she made some valid points. It just made me very sad because I personally want to live on the Orville. So,
yeah, I definitely would too. Like, I mean, I get why she wanted to try to take some of those schematics back to her planet, but at the same time, I'm like, girl, why? It's like, you step back onto the planet, they're going to downvote your ass or something just to keep you quiet.
Yeah. Well, I kept thinking, I mean, you escaped, and she kept saying, I'm not, I really feel guilty for leaving. And I kind of get it. If you had family and friends there, you're out here living your best life with like a machine, literally, that can fabricate anything you want. It can literally create anything you ask it to out of, as far as she understands, thin air, like magic. And then you got people on the planet that are dying because they may have made the wrong person mad in a joke or a comment. So she's like, I feel like she feels guilty. She has this like survivor's remorse. And so I did see that, but at the same time, I'm like, girl, you're on the Orville, get it together.
Oh yeah, you got away.
You got away.
Enjoy yourself.
You get to experience things that no one on your entire planet will ever get to experience, and you get to be the only one of your kind, basically, even though you're human, from your planet, to be in the Union or be, accepted by the Union. You know what I mean? So, or under the protection, should I say?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just that kind of drove me insane. But
I mean, I'm sure there's also like a bit of primitive mindset there as well, where she's also not really comprehending what she's seeing.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, almost kind of like a caveman seeing that fire stick for the first time was like, the fuck is that?
What is that? What is this replicator? I will tell you though, when they went into their version of the holodeck, and we saw those fish that look like really pretty, like half fairy, half koi fish.
Around.
The
world's, or like the universe's greatest mathematicians or something.
Yeah, I thought was interesting. That whole, you could tell that they had an upgrade in budget. And since Disney
honestly,
was putting that bill,
canceling them seemed to have been for the best.
The best thing ever. Now we just have to hope that they get season 4 through Disney Plus. But yeah, Disney Plus has been airing this entire season. I think we are the only ones that did not get it initially because it was on Hulu. But everywhere else that it was syndicated in other countries, it was through Disney Plus. And honestly, I think that's a good place for them. I mean, they've got a lot of the MCU shows, so they're used to having content that's a little bit more adult. So it's not all just Disney and kid related. So they have a place for them. They just need to get approved for a season 4, which they still have not. It is still up in the air, which is why I think the way they ended the show could have been a good series finale, but I don't want it to be. If you
Yeah,
see,
I don't want it to be, but I would be okay because it was a satisfying ending.
I would be okay if they did Penny and Mark's suggestion and basically have a spin-off of Isaac and Claire's marriage with the boys. And she's like, it would be all Jetson themed. And it would be absolutely hilarious. And I mean, I
Yeah,
can see that.
like also when you talk about like the Kalons and how seemingly there's no, at least as far as we can see, any visible females or stuff like that. Like I'd also been thinking for a potential season 4 thing, what if they made themselves a kid?
Yeah, they could very
Like
easily. And
a
that's
synthetic,
something Isaac would
a,
probably
a
do.
synthetic like Kalon, but with female qualities. Because maybe it's like Isaac wants to know what maybe it would like to be a dad. And Claire would be like, well, I never had a daughter before, so
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, just from my own peace of mind. I mean, I don't understand what type of society, because I was always under the impression that the Kalons were genderless. They were a big non-gendered
mm,
society. So, I just wonder why we never have female voices, because non-gendered does not necessarily mean male. So I was just curious why we never heard a female. Um, so yeah, that's something I had a question mark about, which, I'm hoping that's something that the writers and Seth will answer in the future. It's probably something they probably didn't think about, or if they did, maybe it's something we will learn later, because there's a lot of Easter eggs that were in this season.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, because mostly when you look at sci-fi shows in general too, when you have that society of like all synthetics and stuff like that, that's you kind of usually how it is. Like where you have the Cybermen, the Daleks, and stuff like that. I mean, everyone's supposed to be kind of samesies.
yes, but I mean, I need them to be a little bit more progressive and understand that there could be female Kalons as well. So just putting it
Hey,
out in the
hey,
atmosphere, you know.
it could still happen. It could
It
still happen.
it could. I just need it to happen in season 4.
You know, maybe if the Kalon society continues to evolve as well.
Yep. But I mean, we have small mysteries like why are Claire and her sister not talking, to the point where Kelly ended up being her maid of honor and the sister didn't even come to the wedding. Like, I don't think anyone from Claire's family came to the wedding. So, that's
Well, her kids did.
of course. Well, her kids did, and to be fair, she made her kids, so they had no choice. Like, so,
Yeah,
I mean,
they were cool with it. They were
yeah,
cool with
they
it.
live on the Orville, but I do love how they accepted Isaac, and I loved how Marcus was the one that was like, he started off being scared of Isaac, and by the season finale, he's like, "Why aren't you marrying him? What are you waiting for? Just do it." We're
Do
completely
it.
okay with it.
Don't ask us.
Yeah, it's all
We're cool.
good. But yeah, like I said, Claire loves Isaac, and she knows that Isaac, to the best of his ability, loves her. And he
Mhm.
does say that he would not function at full capacity if she was not around. So that's the best love
Mhm.
declaration, besides him promising to always be there for your kids and future generations of kids to look after them ever. They've always got a granddaddy. So I think that's hilarious. But any final thoughts for you on season 3?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I loved it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you watch this video first. Go watch it. But I can't wait and hope. I do hope season 4 gets greenlit. I want to see what happens next. It's really a good show. Like just one of the best shows that I have seen in a long time. You know, whether on cable or streaming.
I agree with that. And I think because they got a bigger budget, they were able to do things that they wanted to do without worrying about
Mhm.
time constraints. So these are essentially mini movies that are not episodes. They look like every episode is a mini movie, and it is very
Oh yeah,
engaging.
about an
It's
hour, like each one about an hour, 10 hour, 20, just about.
sometimes an
It
hour
was
and a
really
half.
good.
Yep.
But one question that I do have, actually at the very end, what's gonna happen to Yalfit, you think? You think he's just gonna become a background player? You think they're gonna recast his voice now that Norm Macdonald's passed? Or do you think they'll give him like some kind of send off?
He might get a send off. I don't know, because they really liked the actor who is doing the voice for him, and they may not want to recast him. They may just
Hmm.
bring in another alien, maybe another species like him, another, and just have a brand new, voice actor. And maybe there'll be an accident. Maybe he'll get promoted or whatever, and then leave the Orville, which
Yeah.
is sad, but at the same time, he was hanging in there for Claire, and now Claire's a married woman. So, and we will not talk about that whole escapade in a previous season because that was just too insane. That's when Family
One
Guy
night.
gets interviewed in,
One
or
night.
so it's basically Family Guy when Family Guy gets melded into the Orville. That's what I call those episodes. But yeah. Overall, though, again, if you have not checked this out, guys, it's the first two seasons were amazing. This one literally has leveled up to a level where I like this better than I like
Knocked it
Picard
out the
and
fucking
Discovery.
park. Like,
So yeah,
superior season in every way.
absolutely. All right. Thank you, Joe, for being here. Make sure you go to
Thanks
Joe's
for
Geek
inviting
Show,
me. I had
guys.
fun.
Like and subscribe. I have his link in the description box. And be on the lookout for the interview with Mark and Penny, or Isaac and Claire, as you know them from the Orville, which will be posted after this video posts. And let me know what you think. All right. Until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it, but hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.